Good afternoon. All right. Something back? Oh, all right. Yeah, great. So my name is Jabi Menon. I'm a product manager at Palo Alto Networks for our Global Protect Cloud Service product, which is now renamed as Prisma Access. So this presentation will be about Global Protect Cloud Service / Prisma Access for networks. Okay, and I'm joined here by Jason. I'll let him introduce pretty quickly.
I gotta turn this thing on early. Can you hear me? All right, excellent. My name's Jason Bandeveris. I am also a product manager within the Prisma Access. I'm going to do my best not to say Global Protect Cloud Service while we go through this, into the Prisma Access team.
All right, the way the presentation, thanks Jason, the way the presentation is organized is first we'll talk about why, right? Why Prisma Access and what are the use cases and why somebody would think about using this product line. Second part of the presentation will talk about what some of our customers' existing architecture look like and how did they use Prisma Access for networks in their environment. And then Jason would come and talk about how to do that from our product, from a configuration UI perspective, et cetera. And then I'll come back and wrap it up with a little peek into the roadmap. Like this is the first time that we are going to do a roadmap presentation here, but that'll be just a very quick 5-minute peek into what's coming. Okay. So with that being said, anybody in the audience who's already using Prisma Access? Evaluating 1, 2, okay, 3, 4, okay. So that's good. Bought or evaluating? Evaluating, okay. Bought, okay. So 2, 3, okay, 4, that's good, okay. At least some people. So if you look at this, so this is the why part of the presentation, okay? So if you start looking at what the enterprises looked like a few years ago, it was like, okay, I have a number of users in my corporate headquarters, and I would have a perimeter security, and then I would go and access internet, and I have some apps on the corporate network that the user would access behind the firewall, right? But if you look how the businesses have changed, and now it has becoming more and more dynamic, right? You have different kinds of device mix. You have IoT devices, you have managed devices, you have unmanaged devices on your network. You have apps in the headquarters, you have apps in the data centers, you have apps in public cloud, SaaS, and the user has to access internet for many of the shadow apps that they use for their day-to-day work operations, et cetera, right? And then you have expanding global expansion from an office perspective. You have different branch offices, retail outlets around the globe. And then you have traveling users who work from wherever they have to work, from hotels, home office, airports, and whatnot, right? So the question that comes is like, okay, so if I am expanding like this from a business perspective, how does my security scale up to this global expansion? And the traditional way of doing the perimeter security is not going to work anymore, right? So if you start looking about that, we said like, okay, what are people doing, right? So the people started with saying that, okay, I have an MPLS backbone in order for me to bring the traffic from my different branch offices back to a headquarters in order to be able to access applications in the headquarters. But because the applications are shifting to the cloud and SaaS and other locations, and my security stack still lives in my headquarters, then what happens is you have to go to the same stack in order to be able to access all those applications. And now this is creating a classic backhauling problem, right? Because if more and more traffic is going to the internet, backhauling all the traffic to an expensive MPLS link to a central site and egressing out from there doesn't work, right? And also in this case, if the branch-to-branch communication needs to happen, in that case, there is no security in that, right? And in order to provide security, now you have to send all the branch traffic also hairpin through a headquarters central site where your security stack live and then route it. So very inefficient way of reaching different applications. And as more and more applications are going in those distributed environments, you're saying that, oh, okay, how do I get my users access to these applications in a faster way, but with the same level of security that I can provide to the user, right? So if that's the case, then people said, oh, okay, if that is what is happening, so let me start putting up a secure web gateway as part of that one. Like, so there used to be proxies and things like that, a complete security stack that used to exist on the headquarters side or the data center. But now people are saying that, okay, if I need to be able to provide a faster path to the internet, and I need to provide some level of security, so let me start thinking about putting a secure web gateway around it, right? So this is great. So secure web gateway, hosted service, you're able to get users access to HTTP and HTTPS resources through that, but that's only HTTP, HTTPS resources, right? What about all the other protocols? So if I look at a typical internet traffic from most of our common customers, we say like about 2/3 is only HTTP, HTTPS. So you're missing about 1/3 of the traffic if you did this, first of all, from a visibility perspective. So that's a complete blind spot for you, right? And then you still have to maintain your MPLS IPsec backbone in order to provide access to the corporate applications that are hosted still in the data center, right? But then there is no security for SaaS applications. So if you're using more and more applications as a SaaS application, for example, Office 365, SFDC, things like that, the secure web gateway is not designed in order to be able to provide security for those SaaS business applications. It is about to provide security for your regular internet traffic, but it doesn't provide security from a policy perspective, inspection perspective to those SaaS applications, right? So now you have some security, some better access to the internet, but not quite there, right? And then you have a different set of products that you have to manage and operate. So different infrastructures that you have to maintain. So then people said, oh, okay, so this is all working out okay, so I need to get some cost also savings, because if my MPLS is becoming expensive, it's 100 times more expensive than, one of the Gartner reports says that MPLS is about 100 times more expensive than regular internet that you could purchase. Then the technology like SD-WAN started to come into play. The challenge with the SD-WAN is though, so it is retiring your MPLS and saving you some money, but the backhauling problem doesn't go away, right? You still have to route all the traffic back into a central hub, the SD-WAN hub, and route it out from there because your security stack lives in that hub, right? So people said, okay, backhauling is still not gone, but I got some benefits, some cheaper internet links that I used as opposed to MPLS backbone. So then people said, okay, what can I do in order to provide actually a faster access plus savings of the MPLS? Then SD-WAN headends started to come in, saying that, okay, if I can have these SD-WAN headends and the fabrics that are being designed in the cloud so that I can provide a direct access to the internet from there, this is great. But then this is just routing at that point, but there's no security in it. So where do you insert security in this path? So these are some of the challenges that the customer are experiencing today. And that's the problem that we are about to solve or we are solving with Prisma Access for networks, right? How can we provide you direct access to the internet, but with the right amount of security at each layer? So the way it works is you have these different branch environments. And if you connect to a Prisma Access architecture, the Prisma Access architecture is consisting of 3 components. The first one is the connectivity layer. The connectivity layer that allows you to connect your branch offices into the Prisma Access cloud. And the cloud is located almost in every part of the world right now. So as of today, we support about 14, 15 locations around the world, but we just announced today that we will be supporting, by the end of this month, we'll be supporting about 100+ locations around the world. If you saw that list of countries and sites that we'll support in the next 1 month in the keynote, right? So it'll be about 76 countries around the world we will have a connectivity for this, right? So any branch or office locations that is around the world can connect into the Prisma Access service, and the way you connect through it is through an IPsec site-to-site tunnel. But once you connect to the cloud, then you will provide a security layer on top of that, and that security layer is provided by the Palo Alto Network Security Platform. So you get all the benefits of the platform in order to provide the security, and then it goes out to your internet. So connectivity and security, both provided at the same time from the same infrastructure. And then the management is also through Prisma Access Management Console, which is Panorama today, okay? And we'll talk about roadmap on that one a little bit later. So with Panorama, you can manage your on-prem firewalls, you can manage your cloud service, you can manage your connectivity into the cloud service. So one single pane of glass for you to be able to manage if you are an existing firewall customers as well, right? And then it provides connectivity back into all of the other applications also, your data centers, your public cloud, your SaaS applications, and that connectivity is local to where the user is. So now it is a fully connected cloud infrastructure at a global scale available for you to consume and with complete security and the fastest path to the application provided in one go. Okay? And you can still manage your entire policy infrastructure using Panorama. So you create a policy in one place and you deploy the policies into GPCS, or sorry, Prisma Access. Getting there. Okay. So with the why part taken, like let's now review some of our existing customers, what they were doing. So before they bought Prisma Access for networks, what did their topology look like? So this is a technology customer, and this is their branch network that look like. So they have about 26 offices around the world that they wanted to secure. So their offices look like, okay, they have each branch location, they had a VLAN for the guest VLAN, and then they had an employee VLAN in their network. So that's what this is representing, right? And then they had the data centers where there was an IPsec site-to-site tunnel between these branch offices to their headquarters. So the guest VLAN would egress out directly from the branch network out to the internet. So that's what it is. So the guest VLAN would go there, and the employee network would have to write an IPsec backhaul VPN into a data center, and then that's how they used to egress out to the internet. So it's created two inefficiencies for them. The first is, okay, guest VLAN is going directly out to the internet, so that's a good faster path. But the problem was, because there was no security applied to that traffic, their IP reputation was getting impacted, right? Because these guest users, they come into their network, you cannot control what they were browsing, and then around the world, their reputation started getting impacted because this is their corporate IP. So from an internet perspective, this is the customer's IP. This is that technology company's IP that is getting registered, and it was getting blacklisted in many of the different websites around the world, and their corporate traffic was also getting impacted because of that. And they said, oh, okay, even in the guest VLAN, I have to have some level of security applied, right? That was their problem. For the employee VLAN, the problem was, okay, I have to backhaul all the traffic to a corporate headquarters before it can egress out to the internet. So there was no localization, and the performance was bad. So when they talked to us and they said, okay, how am I going to solve this problem? So what they said is, let me get Prisma Access service deployed. And they did was they created an IPsec site-to-site tunnel from that branch network to the Prisma Access and go out to the internet. And they sent the guest VLAN traffic through us, and they also sent the employee VLAN traffic through the Prisma Access service. So it was providing faster internet to their employees and the guest users, but with full layer of security provided on that traffic. And then they connected their data centers also to the Prisma Access site, so that all the employee VLAN traffic could be traversed through the Prisma Access, fully security applied in the cloud, and then the traffic could be routed back into the data centers. So they connected both. So all the traffic now from all these branch offices are going through the Prisma Access cloud service, and then fully connected and routed back into their infrastructure for the employee VLAN. But for the guest VLAN, it's still going to be directly going out to the internet from wherever that office is. Okay? And just what are the devices they were using on the branch side? They had a Cisco ISR 900 series and a Meraki on the branch side. And this is the 26 office sites were in these different locations: Frankfurt, Mumbai, Tokyo, Singapore, Seoul, US, and Sao Paulo. These were the 26 global locations that they onboarded to the Prisma Access, and their data center was in India, Mumbai, right? And they connected all of these into the cloud service and secured it. And they used Cisco ISR devices in order to form an IPsec tunnel that was their CPE device, okay? So the second customer that I'm going to talk about this was like a media company. This also was a Cisco shop from a routing perspective, and they had two ISPs, and they were forming a full mesh DMVPN architecture, but similar story. So they have these employees in these different branch offices, but they were all completely DMVPN into a data center, but all the traffic has to go out to that central data center before it could go out to the internet, right? So again, backhaul to DC, slow internet access. So they wanted to solve that problem of how do I allow branch users to go directly out to the internet. And what they did in the first pass is they still kept their DMVPN, but they also created IPsec site-to-site tunnel from those Cisco routers to the cloud service, to the Prisma Access cloud service. And they broke that internet out like that. So all the corporate traffic will still route through the DMVPN, but their internet traffic will go out through the Prisma Access directly out to the internet, right? And what benefit that provided them is direct access to the internet, direct local access to the internet. So the sites where they were in, they created that sites to the cloud service locally in that region, and they were getting access to the local internet, right? And that provided better performance, and they didn't have to drop any security aspect of it, so full security applied. And in their data centers, they had a Palo Alto Networks firewall as well, so they used the same panorama to manage both the data center firewalls and the cloud service. So policies were able to be pushed down from one single management console, all logs, everything in one place. Okay? So this customer had like Cisco devices again at the edge for DMVPN, of course, right? But they onboarded about 247 sites, mostly in the US, but some in Canada and India. And their data center was in California. Okay? So they were able to onboard about 247 office sites in a pretty quick time. And it's fully functional, production deployed, and this is how they're operating their network today. Okay? So third customer that we talked to was a large US retailer and who has deployed, and it's working in production. Their problem was somewhat similar. So they had this MPLS. Instead of the DMVPN, they had MPLS, and all this traffic was going through the MPLS. And the MPLS was like, when I talked to them, it was ridiculously expensive, right? And so they wanted to get rid of that MPLS from a cost savings perspective, but they were also having these projects to go into more SaaS applications for these users. And more SaaS applications their project was SFDC and Office 365. So they wanted to provide local and fast access to these applications for their users. And when they looked at the solution, we said, oh, okay. So they had 3 networks. They have payment processing network, they had guest VLAN, and also the store employees, right? And in the first pass, they said, okay, similar to the other companies, they created an IPsec site-to-site tunnel to the Prisma Access, and they broke out the internet access through the Prisma Access, go directly from the cloud to these applications. So now they were getting faster access to their business applications, SaaS applications, which is Office 365 SFDC, and they were getting local benefit of it, right? But they still continue to use the MPLS to ride all the corporate traffic through it, right? This was the first pass that they did, right? And in the second pass, what they wanted to do was they get rid of that MPLS 100% and onboard the data center also through an IPsec site-to-site tunnel to the cloud service. So provide a complete full connectivity through the Prisma Access service, get rid of MPLS 100%, so their internet traffic and the corporate traffic are all routed through the Prisma Access, connected from a deployment perspective. And they wanted to apply some quality of service, QoS, to their voice traffic. And they do lots of training in store for their enterprise, for their users, and they run lots of video calls and video content through those training programs. It's a large retailer, so from a headquarters, they have to push all this training to their users, and all of that is now going through Prisma Access. Okay, so this was one of the tip. We'll take questions at the end. We'll leave some time for that. Okay. And from a site perspective, so they onboarded about 1,400 sites mostly in the US area. So it's a large US retailer. And their data centers were in Virginia and Ohio. And they were using Cisco ISR devices in order to onboard it. So they scripted this entire thing, and being able to onboard these sites, they were onboarding at a very high rate of 100 sites a day. And they got all this deployed in a pretty short amount of time. Okay. So the final slides, in order to say if you peel the onions of the security layer and the connectivity layer, what does it look like? So we have offered different connectivity layer, which is IPsec VPN, SSL VPN, SD-WAN connectivity, clean pipe, clientless VPN, and from a security stack perspective, you get the full benefit of user ID, app ID, threat ID, wildfire, URL filtering. and the Cortex data lake, so you get access to all the Cortex data lake applications that can be built on top of that. User analytics, behavior analytics, all of that will get there, and also the Prisma SaaS capability, which is also integrated with this environment in order to secure your SaaS applications through an API. Right? And you manage all of this through Panorama. How do you onboard a site, et cetera? And let me welcome Jason to walk you through how that is actually done in the product.
Thank you. This is all right. Excellent. I didn't know if I was going to have to do the joke. Is this thing on? It's so much easier to talk about this. I love it when we have use cases. They're not hypothetical use cases, but they're actually the real deal use cases. So as I talk through this, customers have already done that, right? They've already worked through all those pieces of it. There we go. Now we're going forward. And what I'm going to try to do now, he kind of gave you he dug in a little bit. I'm going to dig in a little further. I'm not going to go so deep that you're more comatose than you already are, because if anybody here had those burritos, they put me right to sleep. Oh my God. So we're going to work through kind of the aspects of it. We'll go through the componentry of it to the point, and this is where I was going to point you to a best practices session. It's outstanding. These two great, bright guys in our group put together this best practices for Prisma Access. I was going to say, we're going to wet your whistle here. We're going to head you over there, get those best practices. Well, that session was yesterday. So, but you're going to have to look for the recording for that. I absolutely recommend it. I took a look at their presentation. It was very good. So I want to start here, spend a couple minutes just on the ownership of what we're talking about, because we don't want you to just give us everything, and neither do you, right? Our goal is to take over the security infrastructure. But you're still going to own the users. You have spent a lot of money setting up your user database. Maybe it's AD, whatever it is. You have authentication, authorization. You have your full corporate policy setups. All of that, you're going to retain that, as well as policy creation and management. We don't want to be sitting here saying, because you're coming on our system, we're going to give you the ubiquitous silver, gold, bronze process. I did that wrong. It's bronze, silver, gold. And that's the only policies you get. You still retain your policy. So if you have a corporate policy, if you're already going through, if you've utilized Panorama in your environment, right, it's just a plug-in into that. We'll get into the management scheme as well before he gets into the sneak peek stuff at the end. All of that is yours. You still own that connectivity up to the cloud. We don't want to take that away from you, right? You have your own pieces that you've already done. What we're going to do is take back or haul that infrastructure. You no longer have to worry about dropping a box or dropping a VM series and then managing that and setting it up and setting up the VLANs and the networking. We're going to do all of that for you. That's what Prisma Access is. You're going to be consuming our security as a service. And as Jobby said, I guess it was 2 slides back, everything you're used to. You're in this room, so I'm going to assume you're familiar with Palo Alto Networks and PAN-OS and those capabilities they have with the threat prevention and all of that. All those capabilities are in this as well. It's just a service you're consuming as opposed to a device you're dropping. He had talked about the Cortex pieces. Data Lake comes in it. Absolutely, you want to do logging. Going to get into that as well. We'll have a slide on that. And then everything else, you don't have to worry about updates. You don't have to worry about setting up my PAN-OS updates. I don't want to have to worry about, is it time to upgrade the PAN-OS itself, updates to the threat prevention, all of those databases. All that is done by us. And the biggest key, if you look down the bottom, provisioning, the second two. Provisioning, fault tolerance, auto-scaling. We're doing all of that for you. If your environment gets larger, we're going to auto-scale up to handle that environment. You're bringing on a new branch. The current piece doesn't have enough bandwidth, let's say, or compute to handle it. We're going to auto-scale that up for you. I want to say automatically, but then that would just be redundant. But having said that, you understand, you no longer have to worry about that. You onboard it, we take care of the rest. So let's go through some of this. I call this a spoiler alert. We're going to build this diagram. So this diagram, we're going to go through, God, I think I have 4 or 5 slides. and we're going to build this out. We'll go into it, like I said, a little bit. We'll do some screenshots. Once again, the best practices, they have the really good screenshots. Mine are going to be a little more basic, but you'll get the understanding on how to go through there. So let's kick things off. Let's start with the thing everybody likes to talk about, licensing and management. I don't like to talk about it, but we should get it. You need to understand what's going on here. So number one, management. If you're already familiar with Panorama, I'd make you raise your hand, but you're probably familiar. Probably, I'm going to guess, at least half of you are already utilizing Panorama, if not more. This is a very easy plug-in to the Panorama you already have. That's what I like about this, very pluggable architecture. In the keynote, they had alluded to, actually they probably did more than allude to, they talked about the cloud-based management. Right? So for brand new folks that are doing this, hey, we got this cloud service we can consume. Why don't I have a cloud management that goes with it? Well, that's coming. That should be coming, well, that's coming. I'm not going to say it's coming tomorrow or in a week, but it's coming very soon. Should be this month. And that's going to give you even extra ability, so much faster, so much clearer if you're not already using Panorama. So we're not going to force you to go out and buy a Panorama. But if you have it, use it. That way it allows you to use the same corporate policies you've already done, and we're going to get into that a little bit. Now I'm going to hit licensing real quick. I'm going to go through this quickly, I hope, because I don't want to talk about SKUs, and I don't want to talk about pricing. You guys work with some great sales guys that can buy you lunch, and they can explain all that to you. For the branch office, or Prisma Access for networks, this is done by bandwidth, okay? So let's start from the management scheme. Within Panorama, you have a pool of bandwidth. This bandwidth is not associated with a specific region, it's not associated with a specific branch, but it's a pool that you can use as you're onboarding your branch environment. So as I bring one in, I can associate a specific bandwidth to it, right? And this is strictly licensing. I'm not talking about QoS, I'm not limiting it. As an example of this, of how you go about doing this, if you've got a branch that has 100 megabit up and 100 down, right, just static, it's 100, 100, that's very easy because we're going to license on what's coming to us, what's coming to Prisma Access. So I would associate 100. Okay, I'm associating 15 here, but let's just say 100. But let's say you have a variable, or not a variable, but you have 100 coming down, but you only have 50 going up. Well, then I would just license it for 50 megabits per second, right? Because that's what's coming to the Prisma Access. And once again, this is not QoS. You can set up QoS. I think I'm going to have a slide on that as well. But we're not talking about QoS. We're not talking about limit. And there's also the burst ability. We allow you to go up a certain percentage over. It's only you'd run into problems if you're consistently, ongoing, going over what you've already licensed it for. Then that's a discussion for some other folks. So now that we've done the management, let's set up logging. We have this outstanding cloud solution for security. We want outstanding logging capabilities that are also out there, and that's Cortex Data Lake for you folks that have been here longer than 2 months with Palo Alto Networks. It used to be the logging service, but now is the Cortex Data Lake. But as Jobby mentioned, you can layer on all the really cool new Cortex stuff, the XDR, so you have the capabilities to do that full on and give you the capability. So what we have here is for logging and analytics. So you have the Cortex Data Lake. You don't have to worry about setting up your Panorama as your logging capability. All of that's going to go out there because the Panorama doesn't need to know about all the devices it's managing either, because we're going to be constantly scaling that in different directions. So that's all going to be going directly to the Cortex Data Lake. And if you're familiar with our logging service and our Cortex Data Lake, it has all, I can forward to you if you have a local SIM. I can forward the logs to there. I can configure alerts. The logging, it does all of those same capabilities, and you purchase it by size, right? I think our minimum is 1 terabyte. I think something like that is very straightforward. But it's definitely key. You don't want to be deploying an environment like this and not logging it and getting all those capabilities. So now let's get into actually bringing those branches on. So I have certain capabilities of ways to do this. If I want to do this manually, I can log into my Panorama and I can manually type in all this information, the site name, how much bandwidth I want to give to it. I would choose, you saw that pull down on the last screen. I would sit there and say which region I want the compute to be in. Generally, you want the compute to be as close to where it is. That way, you're only getting a single hop, or if the POP is local, it's all going to be running as close as possible to that branch. With the announcement around our expansion from 18 POPs to 103, I think, it's going to make it that much easier. And then obviously we need to set up an IPsec tunnel. And that whatever the CPE device is, whether it's a Panorama device, excuse me, not a Panorama, a PanOS device, or in his examples, there's a couple of Cisco's. It could be just a basic router. Anything that's IPsec capable to do initiation, that will do the trick. Obviously, we work at Palo Alto Networks and we prefer you have a PanOS device there, but you don't have to. Or, now that's doing it manually, or if I'm, say, writing a script and going to the Panorama API. Now I can do this in batch uploads. And this, not necessarily new, but this is great, and it's a part of what Panorama gives us. I can sit here and set up a CSV file with all my branches, license it all set up with regionality I want to give them, all of that within the CSV, upload it to the Panorama, save it, commit it, and that's it. I have just onboarded all of those branch sites. From a policy and device perspective and network, when you put in the plugin, we're going to be creating automated templates. So you can actually bring in your existing device policies into the environment, so you don't have to recreate anything. If you have a corporate-wide policy, you can make it part of this as well. So once again, he had mentioned that single pane of glass. It literally is that. You're managing your physical devices, you're managing some virtualized editions, and you're managing your cloud service that you're consuming. All of it from the same spot with the same policy. If you're ISP, if we're really talking about MPLS, taking that out and using this as a service, now we're talking about you're going to have redundant ISPs at each of these branches most likely. So we can fully support that. We can support that as an active passive, or we can support that in an active environment. Both of those are fully supported with Prisma Access. As well as I had mentioned QoS support. I'm not going to lie to you. There are absolutely use cases for QoS. I think one of them, the branch office, was using it, and that's the best case use case. But we haven't seen a lot of uptick on that because, for the most part, they know what their bandwidth is, and they're not too worried about specific applications going through. But within a retail environment, absolutely, we want to make sure that POS, the point of sale stuff, goes through with a higher priority and make sure that gets the most. So here's what's happening in the back end. So after I've done my batch upload, or I've made those changes in Panorama and I've committed those saves, Panorama then goes out and talks to our own orchestration and configuration engine, which takes all of that information, builds it into well-known scripts, then deploys the environment out in the cloud. Now that could be in one region, it could be in multiple regions. It depends how you have that set up and what regions you want. So when we did that batch upload, you notice I had 3 different regions that I used for this. It goes out, automates that, scales it up to fit what kind of bandwidth you need and what kind of compute you need. And it's very, once again, it's very dynamic. If it needs more, if we find that we're hitting a certain percentages of bandwidth, we can easily auto-deploy another one so that it can support that. All of that is without you having to worry about it. It's all being done from our setup, and it's automated, as well as setting up that link back to the Cortex data lake and sending all the logs there, or what logs you choose to send there. After you've done that piece, now I'm setting up those VPNs from the client side, from the branch to Prisma Access. As soon as you point those in, that's it. Now they have fully secured, the branch is fully secured, and they're going out to the internet. Hence the name of this session. Branch offices direct to the internet. And that's what I wanted to show you here. That's it. You basically have 4 steps. Now I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do a couple more slides because I wouldn't be doing Prisma Access justice if I didn't talk about all of it. but I do want to hit upon, this is, if I'm taking a branch and I'm trying to get them internet capable and out to the SaaS devices, this is it. Those are your steps. Set it up in Panorama, push it out, auto-configured, set up your policy, set up your logging, point the branches, and you're done. So I want to talk about service connections for a second. Absolutely not required for this session for getting your branch offices to the internet, but I wanted to talk about them anyways, because that's just the kind of guy I am. So you have the capability to do at least up to 100 service connections. Why would I want to do a service connection? Well, not all branches just want to go to the internet. Maybe they want to go to some internal applications that you have, one or two. Service connections give you that capability. If I have, my user identification, on my user database, I want to maybe have a service connection going back to that as well. So in this use case, I'm actually going to point this out. In here, I have two service connections. I have one going to HQ because I have my Active Directory environment there. So if I want to authenticate users, this is really key in remote. If you have Prisma Access for users, for those mobile users, session right after this, job he's giving. So if you're really interested in those mobile users, he's going to get into that as well. As well as I have a service connection going back to the data center. This is where I'm hosting a couple of local apps. I haven't migrated them into the cloud yet. So perhaps I want to have the branch be able to go back there. And the service connections give you that capability. So that is why you would bring service connections into this if you wanted to utilize and give these branches some sort of access to internal, quote, internal resources. So here it is, from front to back. Can you tell it took me like 12 minutes to do this animation, right? But it's cool, come on, it's better than it just being static. From start to finish, right? Step one. Set all your configs in Panorama for your branch offices. It will then go out and set up the orchestration, and it will auto-deploy into the cloud. Logging is your next step. All that, once again, is done for you. You just need to set it up initially, and then it's going to go out and do that for you. Then setting up policies, hooking up the branch offices, and then optionally, and once again, optionally for this session, I like service connections, and maybe at least one of them. But for this session, if you're giving that, you're not required, right? The key is to be able to have them if they need any kind of user, if you're implementing user ID, let's say, or if they need to get to local apps. That's it. I'm done. That was my piece. And now he's going to do the cool stuff, talk to Prisma Access.
So very quick 5 minutes or 3 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. Are you able to hear me? All right. Okay. So roadmap again. This was something that was announced in the keynote as well. So I'm just going to give you a very quick preview of what's coming. But it's not there yet, just to be clear. So today, the management is through the Panorama. But for those customers who do not have a Panorama, what we are coming up with is a cloud-based management portal for Prisma Access. So if you bought Prisma Access, you don't have to buy a Panorama if you don't already have it. You will be able to manage Prisma Access through the Prisma Access cloud management portal, right? And what that means is, because it's a web-hosted cloud management, a lot of these configurations that Jason talked about will be pre-deployed for you. Like, for example, if you already tell us what kind of a device you have on your branch network, we will pre-create those templates for you to say that, okay, this is the kind of templates that you want in order to be able to bring these devices to us. So you tell us what device do you have, what location you want to turn your IPsec connections on, and we'll provide that config for you to be able to very quickly do that, right? Once you have told us what kind of an environment you have on your branch side, on the CPE side, then you tell us like how do you want to authenticate those devices. You tell us something about like the crypto that you want to set up, and you tell something about the authentication, like what is the shared secret, or do you want to use certificate-based authentication, etc. You tell that, and that's about it. You're done from that perspective. And then you get this full UI in order to be able to customize this. So if you saw the trend, what we are going from is like instead of like Panorama, we're going to more workflow-based configuration through the cloud management. So it will guide you through the next step processes. And along the way, it has all the testing capabilities built into it. It will tell you like, oh, okay, you're done with this step, go and test and verify these things to make sure that it is actually done right, as opposed to you having to build everything in one shot and then trying to figure out some troubleshooting mechanism if you misconfigured something, right? Those are challenges that you will not have to go through this. And then this gets you the ability to go into specific elements of the config and update that. For example, if you wanted to bring up a secondary tunnel from if you have two ISPs in the branch, and if you wanted to bring up the secondary tunnel, then you just come here and say, okay, now I'm setting up that secondary tunnel. And then if you want to do some QoS, those are all optionals. You don't have to do them, but the setup process will guide you through that, right? And because of this, this is the same place where all your Cortex data lake is also going. So it's the same place that you log in to manage your Cortex data lake. It's the same place that you log in to manage your Prisma SaaS. This is the same place that you will be able to go and manage your Prisma Access. It's not going to manage your on-prem firewall. So if you have both on-prem firewalls and initially, at least, like from an immediate roadmap perspective. So if you have on-prem firewalls, and if you also want to use GPCS or Prisma Access, sorry, excuse me, I need to get there. Then you will still continue to use Panorama. But if you do not have Panorama and you are a white space account from a Prisma Access perspective, then you will be able to take advantage of the cloud-based management portal. Okay, let's speed things up.